Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Vocational Ed and Training User Group for May 2021. This is our second user group of the year, and we've just hit our biggest turnout ever of 52 individuals. So thank you so much. Today, the gentleman we'll be speaking is Julian Ridden. Julian, previous employee of Instructure and has also worked very closely with RedHill Education Group and has recently taken a new role at Upskilled. His knowledge of Canvas is excellent. His ability to then transform that and show that for what we need in this particular industry group is also going to be a real eye-opener for this. Doesn't mix his words up, very direct, highly enjoyable. Julian, I'm just going to let you get straight into it because there's no point introducing it because you're going to need all the time you can get.
I'm going to need all the time. So look, I will jump in. Thank you for the introductions. Thank you for the insults. It's been wonderful to be back. It's great, first of all, seeing so many faces I recognize in the chat. It's what I've hated about COVID is the fact that we don't have our industry events. You know, Damien, thank you for getting this group back here. I'm invited as a speaker today, but I also intend on being a very active part of this group because this is the world we're now in. As was joked about by both of our hosts, but sadly incredibly accurate, I have so much I want to share. I am going to run out of time. I am going to speak at 1,000,000 miles a minute. What I do promise is that the presentation deck that I'm using, I'm going to be sharing with our hosts so that please don't think you have to memorize everything I'm about to throw at you. I want to share a whole bunch of ideas. Secondly, this is being recorded. So when I do speak like a madman and you can't keep up, it's not you, it is me. I am running on pure caffeine, but you will be able to come back and rewatch. So look, let's really just jump straight into things. What I've been invited to talk about today is the student-centric approach. And it's no surprise at all that I've called this the COVID edition. I really want to share the story of what we went through at RedHill. When I was at RedHill, I was the head of online learning. And by the way, I currently work for a company called Upskilled. I'm going to highlight that he's actually here. We have Mr. Ben Grigor, who is the general manager of Upskilled, sitting in the chat, who has promised to heckle me. So as you see the heckling happening, please note I am prepared and I have my insults to counter. But the talk I'm giving, sadly, isn't from the Upskilled perspective. I actually hope in a couple of months to be able to tell you the Upskilled story because we're doing some really exciting things. But what I'm actually wanting to do is I want to go back 1 year BC, before COVID. A year ago, we lived in a very different world. I was working for a company called RedHill Education. They're a public company, specifically at a branch of it called Coder Academy. I was helping run their K-12 programs, which was a lot of fun. But RedHill as an organization is predominantly on campus. We had fantastic campuses in each of the capital cities for most of our brands. AIT was a technology and design brand. We're doing both higher ed and RTO certifications and courseware, short courses. We had Coder Academy running boot camps as well as Cert 3s. We also had IACD, the School of Color and Design. Each of these organizations were face-to-face on campus. They were very much built around the idea of blended learning. They were classroom-led with educators in classrooms, very traditional, dare I say it, RTO style model, you know, with a very strong focus on the student as being a large part of it. Now, before COVID, I was actually contacted, as was mentioned, I have a background. I spent several years working at Instructure and a huge fan of Canvas, and we use that at RedHill. I was approached to help design a program for online learning. And I wish I had time to go through this entire spectrum of how do we plan an online learning project. But this is really what we're starting to do. I got a call when I was at Coda from our GM saying, hey, you want to go online? We iterated ideas. We designed a whole bunch of new processes. We came up with systems. And that's what I want to talk about today, by the way. What are those processes and systems that we put in place to make our online learning student-centered? You know, we came up with implementation guidelines, built, trained, tested, launch. And again, there's an hour talk in this process alone. But I pause because after I got that call, this happened. We knew COVID was coming, and that's why they were reaching out to me to start an online learning project. But, well, let me jump back for a second. Remember I talked about this timeline? Well, I got a call on the Monday. On the Tuesday, the government closed everything. This actually was the timeline. of each of these phases. I was called on Monday. We started the iteration on Tuesday. We launched 4 campuses across Australia-wide with now international students who are sent home. That's what we're talking about. So the reason I bring this up is everything I'm showing you. Am I saying this is all best practice? No. But what I am going to tell you is I love what we did. We had a fantastic team because everything was suddenly driven by something that we never actually really had the chance to think about from this perspective. We had to meet the challenges of the business compliance and the students in a world that literally changed on a dime. And all of you know this. You have all been living this for the past 12 months. So what was the strategy? If you're not familiar with the term, we use skeuomorphism. Skeuomorphism is normally used when you talk about design. It's how do we take items from the real world and kind of represent them digitally. When you're trying to transition quickly from an offline or blended environment to purely online, I took a very much a skeuomorphic approach. How do we take what we did on in face-to-face, that environment that students, that educators were comfortable with, and mirror that into an online world? You know, how do we take this campus experience and make it digital? So let's start. I see Adam is laughing. My slides are renowned for built-in jokes and geek references. Adam, it's great to see you still appreciate it. Sadly, everybody else is looking bewildered. Again, because of the amount I want to get through, I'm just going to give some quick definitions. When you talk about student-centered, especially when you talk to academics, when you talk to, dare I say it, even auditors, you know, everybody you speak to will come up with different definitions of student-centered. And by the way, so we should. What our students mean to us is always unique based on our business model, based on our implementation models, and based on who our cohorts are. But when we do any project, when it comes to creating education, and again, be it digital or otherwise, we have to think of what is that methodology. And for us, when I said student-centered with a COVID definition, it had to be highly interactive. It had to be individualized because every student, and dare I say it, every educator was going through their own experience. And that included not just the experiences of how do I learn, what technology do I have access to, what do I need to learn? But on top of that, we had the stresses of I'm locked down, I can't leave my house, I'm worried about what's going to happen to my family, I've just been kicked home because my international visa's been cancelled, all those other things that added to the stress. So we knew that it had to be individualized. We knew it had to be incredibly flexible in timing, in mobility. Students no longer were going to be on the optimal device. They were going to be on that shared internet connection, potentially with 4 peers in a shared house. They were going to be using their mobile phone, lying in bed because their partner was actually doing their job in the kitchen, you know, the world that we're all familiar with. We knew it had to have open communication because the stress levels. And that communication was no longer, when we think about the RTO space, we do a lot of focus when we talk about our favorite word, compliance, on how do we communicate with the student and how do we capture that communication back. But we had to ensure we also had strong peer-to-peer communication to ensure that they were engaged. And we had to have that supportive and inspiring learning environment. Now, again, telling something that most of you will know who are in this space. If you're an RTO, you have gone through and you actually now have been certified, validated to be either an online or an offline provider, right? And you've gone through and you've got that. Now, what actually happened is, especially those who also work in the higher ed space, people like Texas suddenly went, you know what? We're going to ignore those definitions for a while because you're all online. Congratulations. But what it meant was all of a sudden that many of us, call a spade, all of a sudden we were scared for our businesses. You know, not only were my students disappearing because they were going home, they were losing their jobs, they were stressed, but all of a sudden, all my competitors were now in my space. No longer was it, oh yeah, well, this mob down the road do this similar to us, but this mob in Adelaide do face-to-face training, and this group over here in Melbourne, but I don't worry too much about them. We were all online and we're all trying to do the same thing. So we had to make sure that whatever we did, we had to make sure was quality and inspiring for our students and educators. And that included content, that included the technology mix, that include innovative, I'm going to throw buzzword bingo at you here, not just pedagogy, but also think about the andragogy of the situation, and also just how can we constantly iterate? Again, to risk insulting people, but our sector is not known for ability to change. And our sector is sadly running a close second to higher ed when it comes to how keen we are to experiment and adapt. Now, some of us are better than others, But as a whole, as a sector, we all feel that we're held back by this wonderful word called compliance, that, oh, we have to do things a certain way and things will suffer. COVID changed that overnight. And so we took advantage of it and ran with it. All right, so the next methodology I really wanted to discuss, and this is critical. I wanted, as we talk about skeuomorphism, well, we used to have campuses. Our students would come to a campus. They did everything on site with an educator. They came to one place. We had to have one place. But I want to stress what I mean by, say, one place for all things and not one tool for all things. Many people get caught up trying to say, oh yeah, we can make this one tool do everything. As I go through and talk about the technology mix of how we implemented this, it very much was about the idea of one place, but taking those strengths of Canvas to make sure we can bring all the tools together to work as one functional digital campus. And that's NX, the Canvas strength. People who know me from my Canvas days know that the thing that I love talking about is LTI, Learning Tools Interoperability, and API, the application interface layers that allow us to connect these tools together so they work natively. And also the other strength of Canvas that nobody I see takes full advantage of is the ability that you can customize. I want to show you a few of the customizations. I can't show you all our magic sauce. We've got to keep some of our secrets because we are all competing. Hello, competitors. But I do want to go through and highlight, like, what are the advantages that we have when we pick up a tool like Canvas to actually make it meet our needs? And let's start here, the dashboard. Now, at a cursory glance, you're going to say, you told me you were doing some customizations, but that just looks like Canvas. Actually, no, it doesn't. First of all, we actually added additional items to the left-hand menu. If you're not familiar, you can add additional JavaScript to Canvas that, if you have that ability, allows you to add whatever functionality that you want. So we had to make sure that all our online resources were easily available. So we added a new custom item, which was done using JavaScript and CSS, where we could do things such as, add communications channels for our student news, create a digital version of our library. Those of you who are in the wonderful world where you're forced to actually have a library just for a compliance tick, well, we were, and we had to digitize that overnight. Also, if you look at the bottom of the screen, that is not the standard footer. One of the things that always has kind of bugged me about Canvas is I actually want the footer to be customized for me. I need to make sure things like our code of conduct, our policy documents, this is all stuff that, again, compliance requires us to have, but I don't have the time to put it into every single course and to make sure it's there. So I customized the footer, again, using JavaScript to go through, so at the bottom of every single page was now the information that I wanted. I was nice. I still left the Instructure logo because, I still am a little bit of a fanboy. All right. So we talk about the library space. Now, again, for those who want more information on any of these things, I'm happy to talk about it. This is just introducing concepts and ideas with the time I have. This here is a Canvas course. We actually started creating courses, not just for education, but we created virtual spaces. In many ways, Canvas became an intranet. So what you're seeing here is that our library space. I embedded a library search for our online catalog. I put links to the various tools that we were paying for, Flipster, EBSCO, all those various things, information for students. They now had a digital library that they could access just with one click as a course that they were all enrolled in just as a cohort. There's no assessments here. It's purely here to replicate that physical environment. We put our orientation online. Now you're going to see a few of these, my compliance stamps. Just because COVID forced us to change quickly did not mean that we could ignore compliance. There's a whole bunch of processes we had to think about, oh, geez, we did it face-to-face. How do we digitize these processes but make them efficient? And how could we do them in one place, which in our case, our campus is now Canvas. So we actually went through and created orientation courses. And again, I can't show you all of this, but it has some of the traditional orientation things like, welcome, and here's a presentation deck of who we are, and But we also did, we digitized processes such as they would go through and read information. We then had a quick quiz to show demonstrated learning, that the learning was already now underway as they were learning how we were teaching online. The USI was submitted here, which was great because as an assignment, I now had the USI as an assignment entry that I can now just download as a CSV and with all the supporting documentation. So for those of you doing USIs, requesting their student cards, we didn't know when we were going to come back face to face. So we still wanted to make sure we had student cards for when they had to return back to us. And things like registration forms for RPL, credit transfer, things like that. We did all of this in an orientation course, which was wonderful, simple. The next thing, and this is where, again, I'm going to throw a whole bunch of ideas, but slow down a bit on, is the next thing we recognize is a strong focus on help. This is where most RTOs, most small businesses make their biggest mistakes. Oh yeah, great, we've got Canvas. And you know what? The Canvas salesperson came out and I used to do this, so I will happily call this what it is. And they go, and the great thing about Canvas is it's really easy to use, and we've got this wonderful success because we cross the chasm of want and we have a tool that just gets used. This is all true. I stand by those lines. However, it doesn't just happen magically. People don't suddenly go, oh yeah, the Tesla is a really easy car to drive. You just get in and push a button, but you still have to be taught how to bloody drive. Well, unless you're an American and you just turn the autopilot and crash on a freeway. But hey, look, they're Americans. We don't judge. Well, we do, but that's another story. So how do we go through and build the help mechanisms in to make sure that our students and educators, trainers have what they need? Well, I mentioned earlier, we went and customized the help menus. I went through and made sure that not only did we have, the resources that Instructure built, they had some fantastic COVID-19 resources, which is still incredibly relevant. If you haven't checked them out, please do. But we also did things like, there's a link there you would never have seen before, how to use Canvas. I had to put that there. I couldn't just assume that all these students were going to magically know how to get the power out of this system, how they could use it on their mobile devices, how they could submit assessments and get reminders and do collaboration with peers. And we deployed the Passport to Canvas course. If you're not familiar with this, it sits in Commons. Definitely customize the hell out of it. Like all things, it is written generically, but the foundations that it gives you is absolutely stellar. It only took me a couple of days to customize this to meet the needs of how we were rolling out. If you're not familiar with this particular course, it actually goes through. One thing I have to admit, I feel guilty not changing, is the entire thing was based around travel. Highlighting that at the beginning of COVID maybe wasn't the best step, but everybody had a good laugh about it. I actually had to change. We actually added some extra things. Always made sure that Sydney was the place that you started and Sydney was the place you ended up because, we weren't going anywhere else. But what you actually get inside this course, if you're not familiar with it, is it actually does go through step by step and explain in layman's terms each of the tools, why they are here and how to use them. And that foundational element was great because those of you who've been using Canvas for a while know that, no, we don't actually need to have training for students. We don't need it. Most of them will figure out the basics, especially if they're led through the first couple of assessments and tasks. However, if you equip your students with basic information, they use the power of Canvas. Oh, I can set reminders. I can get alerts on my mobile phone. I can record directly in if I need to do a simulation. Wow, and that's where this course was a real godsend. We also utilized a tool called Freshdesk. Now, the first of external tools, I'm very keen to highlight where something is extra in cost. We used a tool called Freshdesk, which is a help desk tool. I did a very quick, when I say very quick evaluation, I mean 4 hours of Googling, about half a day of trialing, and then I signed a contract because that's the speed that we were working at. So again, I'm not saying this is the best tool on the planet, but let me tell you why I chose it and why it's still a critical part of what I'm always doing with students. I needed not just to create a course or a place that they could hunt for information. We had to make information available on demand for students because no longer could they go to their trainer, to their assessor, to their educator and just go, hey, how do I do this? Because first of all, they didn't usually know how to open up an inbox message to write the message, hey, how do I do this? So yes, it allows you to create things like knowledge bases that are searchable and queryable, that, I can create instructions such as how to log in. And this isn't rocket science, but let me show you the really cool thing about it. What it allowed us to do is on the bottom of every in fact, let me just zoom that in. On the bottom left of every page in Canvas, including the login screen, was a little green help me button, bottom left-hand corner. That button is on every single page of our Canvas at AIT. Now, when you click on that, it brings up a search box where you can type in any search in English and it looks for keywords. Like, I can't log in. I can't find this. How do I submit this? Where do I find this? And what it actually then does is not leaving Canvas at all, brings the information with the step-by-step instructions. We didn't have a huge team around this. This was COVID. We had to launch this in a week. What would actually happen is me and a couple of trainers, we kind of thought, what are the common questions that we have? And we have a student services, student administration team that help with this. But as we went on, that first, second, third, fourth week, not only can students type it in, but in the background, it stores those questions. And I could run a report of what questions the student's asking, where I would now each day kind of create that new answer. So this actually, it wasn't that we had a fully working help desk out of the box, but over the course of those first 2 weeks, we ended up creating 40 articles really quickly that gave the students what they needed on demand. So this was a tool called Freshdesk that I really liked. It also allowed them to go through and submit requests, but we didn't just put e-learning in here. The other thing that we did is, because we went completely online, I know that might be hard to see. Let me just make that full. I actually put every part of the business in here. Rather than going to the website to find an email address or a phone number to reach that certain person, we treated all of these basically as a ticket. I could say, I've got to need to contact the bursary because I've got a finance issue because I just lost my job. I need to contact library support because I need help finding a resource, or I don't know what plagiarism is, which the amount of students who go, I didn't realize copying and pasting content was bad. Anywho, I need online learning support. I want help from admissions because I want to sign up for that next course. What we actually did was, that was just a simple drop down, and it automatically went into the queues for these people, which then allowed us to do SLAs and respond quickly. So again, I can't go deep into this, but it was really effective as making sure we could enable that part of the student journey. And that leads me to communications. I love Adam's face. See, I know, hey, we're the RTO world. I'm in a people that are my generation that will appreciate these references. I did a K-12 talk a month ago where people asked me, who's that guy and why is he talking into a shoe? And I just had to shake my head and in disbelief. Because first of all, you look at 99, you don't look at max. No one looks at max. So let's talk about communication. I mentioned that we actually built a standalone Canvas course. Now, this was an epiphany of an idea that actually came out of our student services team that I'm now going to be repeating, hopefully here at Upskilled as well. This is a dedicated course for the student services team, where they could go in and do the stuff that we used to have on notice boards or on the website, all these other places that the students used to have to go. We have announcements, which again, think about what announcements do. For those of you who don't know Canvas, when I do an announcement, it also automatically emails that to the student. It will ping it on their mobile phone if they have one. You can schedule them. They can contain multimedia. They're wonderful. So we created announcements for all the key information for students, and then created discussion forums where we'd say, hey, this is information for Sydney students. This is information for Melbourne students, where we taught them how they could then subscribe to each one so that they then got the alerts that were relevant to them. So we didn't have to think about marketing platforms and email methodology and what happens if it goes into junk. It was all here. The other cool thing is, again, you look at this and go, that looks like Canvas, but look at the top right. The top right is alive, and what you don't see in a static screenshot is this is animated. It just scrolls to the right. All the things in our announcements were automatically deployed into every Canvas course. So even in a course, anything that we put up is an important announcement for students, which again, think about those first 6 months of COVID. Information changed daily, and not just for the student, but also for the trainers. So I used a really cool tool called Feedwind. If you weren't aware of this, Canvas forums are awesome because one of the things they can do is generate an RSS feed. Feedwind allows me to go through, put that RSS feed, and it gives me a widget that I could then embed into a page. So I embedded this into every single of our Canvas courses. So students didn't even have to remember to check the notification. They didn't have to remember to go into a communications course. All the important stuff also showed in every course in Canvas. So it was a little tool called Feedwind. We also forced everybody into the inbox of Canvas. Now, everybody talks about this, and there's always, oh, but what if, and oh, we haven't thought about this, and everybody gets caught up in bureaucracy. Let me tell you, COVID allowed me to get rid of all of that, and it was the best thing we ever did. So the problem when you have email is when individual trainers or assessors are emailing students individually, we lose track of the communication trail. This is a huge issue when we come to compliance, both with TEXA and ASQA. The great thing about doing it in Canvas is, first of all, it looks like an inbox. So they already know how this operates. Secondly, it still forwards it to their email anyway. So it will go into the student email and to the trainer email. However, the excuses of, oh, I didn't see it. Oh, my spam must have blocked it. Oh, I sent it. Did you not get it? Everything here is traceable and trackable. So while I have wiped out the names, because obviously this is live information, this is here, all communication from teacher to student, both as bulk, hey, everybody, we're doing this, or as individuals, hey, you're late, or you've failed this assessment. All that communication was done through the inbox. And when an audit does happen, we now have a full record of all that we can export with CSVs and APIs and present if needed. Huge time saver, great for everybody, and fixes compliance issues. We also use the conference tool. Now, we all know that Zoom fatigue is now a thing. Who would have thought 12 months ago that we'd be using Zoom as another verb? I thought bad enough we all said, have you Googled something? Well, now it's like, oh, I'll Zoom you. We chose at the time to go with Big Blue Button. Now, at the time, Zoom hadn't done all the accelerated growth that they've done, so Zoom has changed a lot. But when we began this process, Zoom was not an education tool. It wouldn't have worked. So we chose to use Big Blue Button. I still stand by that and recommend them. I want to show a couple of reasons why. But first of all, it means that, yes, we can create virtual conferences. We all know what they are. After the last year, we all know what they are. Let me tell you a couple of things that you may not know about it. If you actually pay for the commercial version of Big Blue Button, so in other words, there's a free one that comes with Canvas, but the commercial version doesn't just give you the full tools, but also does recordings that automatically get stored in Canvas, which is wonderful. And it gives statistics, which again, I actually forgot to put my compliance stamp on here, but I wanted to. This is a page that now shows up in Canvas dynamically after a session is finished. How long did that run for? How many students were there? How much did they participate? So for those of us who are worried about participation rates and evidence of learning, it's all here. I can see what time they joined, what time they left. So if you're working with text or with things that you have to take attendance, we actually use this to record attendance. Really powerful and completely seamless. So again, even though it's a separate tool, in this case, Big Blue Button, at Upskilled, we use Zoom, by the way, and having some great success with that. So it's really not necessarily about the tool, but the story I want to illustrate here is how deeply it's integrated to, again, solve the problem and put it into one place. Now, another tool, this is really out there, but I did want to highlight it, is a tool called Discord. The other thing that COVID allowed me to do that normally we would not be given the opportunity is normally it's like, oh, I need a tool that does this. So I go and I look at what our sector is doing. And I'll go to the other, to the VELG conference or another RTO conference, and I'll speak to my peers, and we all use the same boring ass tools that we've been using for years. What I have loved about COVID is it actually made it acceptable to actually look at other communities because we were moving at such speed. I said, what are communities that have high levels of engagement, that have high levels of collaboration, and that are good for multidisciplinary and multitasking? There's one easy answer: video gamers. If you have a look at Twitch streamers, they're actually teaching how to play a game while talking, while playing, while interacting with a large group of peers and building community. Well, wait a second, isn't that what I want to do with my online learning? So we actually utilized a tool called Discord, which is actually there for live chat, kind of Slackish in a way. In fact, Slack's trying to buy them is what's happening in the background. But what's different between Discord and those other tools is it also does live audio chat. You can just have a room and now we're all talking. In Coder Academy, which is a boot camp, an accelerated Cert 3 model, our students needed to do project work together, and asynchronous tools weren't cutting it. It was a start. And the other thing about this compliance stamp is that all the logs from this were automatically stored onto an Amazon server for me. So I just created an S3 bucket. For those of you who are techie, I just created a storage space on Amazon, and I had one of my guys write a script. You know, the great thing about having a school called Coder Academy under your belt, every time I had a script written, I'd find a poor student who was bored and go, hey, could you write this? It was brilliant. I miss it. I miss it dearly. But so they actually wrote a script for me that automatically stored all those logs onto an Amazon server. So again, if there was ever an issue, I was not afraid of the what if because COVID forced me to not have time to think about that, which some of you may be horrified about, and you're right to be horrified. It is a perspective shift. Instead, it forced me to think about the process of, no, what do I do if it happens and how do I deal with the repercussion? Okay, we've got a policy, we've got a code of conduct. They all have to accept it as part of our orientation. So it's an expectation. We have these tools, but they're all logged so that if a student does abuse it, we can bring the logs out as evidence and deal with that student. that's the process that we chose to go down, and it was remarkably effective. All right, knowing that I'm running out of time, next thing I want to talk was how do we build at scale? Oh boy, I always talk about what I love about Canvas. Let me tell you what I hate about Canvas. The editor. Now, if you're doing basic content, it is spectacular. It's simple, it works, it's compliant. If you want to create any kind of content that actually looks engaging and that is highly structured, you will hate the editor as much as I do. Now, it is actually that way by design. I don't work for the company anymore, so I'm going to give you a bit of background information. This line was always said internally in the product team because out of context, it's highly offensive. So again, before you get offended, please let me finish the story. What we used to say in the product team is that Canvas needs to be simple enough that even a teacher can use it. Now, before you get offended at what that statement means, the average trainer, assessor, educator is not an ICT technologist. We are specialists in our field of hospitality or business or art or whatever, or safety or whatever it is that we are teaching. We are not technologists. So the intent of the tool is it needs to be simple enough that those people can just grab it, pick it up, use it, and create quality content. However, when you have instructional designers who come in and wanted to go to that next level, they find it limiting. There are tools, plugins that deal with this. Now, there's a couple. At Upskilled, we use a wonderful tool called Lorry. If you're using Lorry, please check it out. And when I was at RedHill, I chose to use a tool called City Labs, or what they refer to as design tools by City Labs. What both these tools allow you to do is create really high quality, scaffolded, templatable content that allows you to quickly build at scale. Now, again, I don't have time to do full demos, but let me quickly show you an example. First of all, actually inside Canvas, it just loads up on the right-hand side. So that's a Canvas page. It could be an assignment, a page, a discussion, doesn't matter. Anywhere there's an editor. And on the right-hand side with City Labs, this tool just appears. And you can choose a theme that automatically will structure things a certain way. I can add a banner image, I can customize styles, and we can create templates. So we actually created a whole bunch of templates on the fly. You know, a template for our homepage should look. And when a creator just says, I want to use the homepage, it bang populates what you see on the right, and they just fill in the blanks. And each of those links, by the way, automatically links to module 1, module 2, module 3, module 4, module 5, and a course. For those who are techie, this is built upon Bootstrap, so it's automatically fully responsive. All those icons are using a font awesome, so they load quickly. But we came up with the designs and then made it templatable in such a way that, again, compliance, tick of approval, all our pages now have the same look and feel. All our assessments share a standard structure. All we now have to do is to build at scale quickly is fill in the blanks. What you're not seeing here, and I had to get rid of it because I got in trouble last time, is I use, if you've ever been a designer, you would have heard of a tool called Lorem Ipsum, which generates what looks like pretend Latin. That's boring. I use Bacon Ipsum, which generates a whole bunch of random paragraphs of pork-related products. This was wonderful until at Instructure, I went to a jury school to do a sales session and the entire content was full of pork. They had a good laugh. I felt very uncomfortable. We all moved on. They bought it in the end, and that was the important thing. So that's really good. The next thing, Studio. If you haven't assessed Studio, please do so. This is more than just a video tool. It is misunderstood. I'm here to do the salespeople's work for them. Studio is one of the tools that Canvas or Instructure released a couple of years ago that allows you not just to put video in, to make video useful for assessment. For those of us who have to do simulations, experiential learning practices, a student can either record directly on a phone, on a laptop, on a tablet, even as of 2 months ago on a Chromebook finally. They got fully working on Chromebooks, but they can record directly in. You can then not just display it to students and get data. Here you can see I always use Harry Potter for demos, but you can see, I can not just see how's a cohort watching this resource, but I can even click on the individual and track, not just did they watch it, but which parts did they watch and how much of it. But you can also then use it for assessment. And what you're seeing here in the background is actually the SpeakGrader screen with a studio video on the left that's been submitted, where as an educator, I could put inline comments on the timeline. In fact, as of last month, they just added annotations onto it, which is brilliant. And I can then combine it with outcomes. So on the right-hand side, I might have each of my UOCs that I can now go, yes, satisfactory or competent, or whatever is the scale that you're using. The ability for us to make multimodal interactive assessment that is compliant while also giving us full tracking and done at speed is far worth more than the cost of the tool. And so if you haven't thought about it from those perspectives, please reach out and just tell them I sent you. They don't give me kickbacks yet, but I'm working on it. The next tool I want to talk about briefly is actually what I'm using right now. If you're wondering, it's like, no kickbacks. Adam, you see that? And this is why Adam's being
I was actually in the chat. I was just supporting you as well, because there's actually an update coming in June for more admin analytics around Studio as well. So I was trying to help you, and then you just threw me under a bus. So what can I do?
Well, get ready because there are 2 more buses coming. So the next tool I want to talk about is also a fantastic free one. And if you're wondering how I'm doing this presentation, how do I have slides in the background, John Oliver style? How am I zooming in and out? How am I able just to, without looking away, be able to do things like bring myself in and out or turn myself into a Jedi Knight or old-timey? This is a fantastic tool called MMH. It is free for education. The guy who created it is the same guy who created Evernote. He actually went on record and said he had to come up with a product name that people could pronounce while eating a sandwich. And so we have is free for education. So while it is a corporate tool, you can download it, get a 14-day free trial. You can also go there, put in your education credentials, and that's by ways higher ed, vocational, technical colleges, K-12, you name it. And it's a tool that allows you to create engaging interactive content like I am doing with you. So you're seeing me and you're seeing my content. You're not being forced to pick one or the other. I cannot talk about this tool enough. Please go to their website, check it out. And it's free for education. You've got nothing to lose. But yeah, again, I have to move on, but it was a cornerstone of our video practice for making sure that when we did Big Blue Button or Zoom, we use these tools. Again, within 2 weeks of being at Upskilled, we now have all our trainers now using this and they're absolutely loving it. All right, and now next thing is the data. And this is where I have to finish up. I've talked about obviously how we supported the student journey and how I've taken the Canvas tools and kind of tried to amp them up with either additional customization or additional technologies. And I've shared a few of the ones that we utilized. But all of this is for naught if we don't have actionable data behind it. Now, again, Canvas is fantastic. And not only does it collect data and it has an open data model behind it, but that open data model also allows other tools to integrate with it. I want to show you some of the ones. Again, we didn't have time to create everything out of the box. One day, I'm going to come back to this group and get my general manager to do a presentation on how we use Salesforce. Our Salesforce in Canvas is tight like this. Assessments automatically put into Salesforce. When a student commences a course, Salesforce automatically does all the enrollments and assigns due dates and assigns trainers. The open data model is incredibly powerful when it comes to integration. But for us, it was about actionable data. Now, the first thing, if you didn't know it, is you can use Google Analytics. And I did this very heavily, especially in the early days with Canvas. On the Canvas forums, and again, I'll share some links through Adam and Damien, there's a fantastic part there where it actually says, okay, here's how you can not just add Google Analytics to a course, but here's a couple of customizations you can make on the back end of Google that will actually have it recognize what roles are, what sub-accounts are, and what students are, which actually then allows you to generate really detailed reports on sub-accounts, student activity, devices, time online, things like that. Free, incredibly valuable, and we use this very heavily. We also, as I mentioned, use Studio. It's really important, especially when you're in great times of change, to make sure you can iterate your content. Dump and run no longer works in our world. And I say our world, I don't care if you're K-12, higher ed, vocational, it doesn't matter. The idea of I just built the resources, I bought it from this source, we're just going to dump it and run. We actually have to get back and iterate and see what works, because we now have so many competitors in this space. We need to make sure that our education, our resources is sharp as a COVID needle. Let's go with that, shall we? So data actually allows us to keep on top of that and be able to iterate on that. No one's watching this, but they're still passing. Do we need it? Or no one's watching this, we're failing. Well, they watched it, but they only watched the first 22 minutes. They skipped the other hour and a half. Maybe it's too long. It allows you to get that data and to paint those stories and to fix them. Now, another commercial tool I want to highlight. This is a tool called Aspire EDU. Aspire EDU is the company. The tool is called Dropout Detective or GradeMark. This is a tool that is absolutely critical to our operations at AIT. I do not mind sharing that piece of background information. It's also a tool that I'll be rolling out at Upskilled in the not too distant future. This is a tool that takes all that data that is in Canvas. When your students are fully online, it now has the whole picture. When you're blended learning, Canvas doesn't have the whole picture, but when you're fully online, like COVID, Canvas now has the whole picture of learning. But what we don't have in Canvas is an easy way to take that data, understand it, and make it actionable. So what Dropout Detective does, it uses a whole bunch of risk factors. How often are they logging in? How often are they submitting work? Are they late? Are they early? Are they participating in activities? And it's really smart. Again, I can't do their sales pitch. I'm not here to do their sales pitch, but just so you can picture it, not only does it have a whole bunch of baseline stuff, are they logging in? Are they doing stuff? It also compares it to their own activity. You know what? This student used to log in every 3 days. Now they're logging in every 5 days. That's showing that they might be losing interest. Not that they are, they might be. This student used to always submit things 3 days early. They don't have to, but this student always did. But now they're actually only doing it 1 day early. It goes through and doesn't just compare against a baseline. It compares against themselves and it compares against their cohort to identify what are patterns of risk. And then every day this updates. My student services team can go in here and then say, hey, look, who's going up? Oh, let's click on them. And by the way, obviously I've anonymized this data, but I could do things such as, okay, great. I can see all the courses that they're in. In fact, let me just zoom myself out for a second because you can't see the data. There we go. I can see all the courses on one screen. I can see their grade, the number of zeros, number of missing assignments. When did they last access it? When was their last submission? Awesome. I can go through and I can see the history. You know what? They were showing signs of risk, but then we reached out to them and great, we've got it sorted. Or sometimes vice versa. We can see the pattern of risk. I can go through and we can add notes and tag those notes and have those notes automatically alert the upline responsible for it. So this is actionable data. All right, yeah, this student didn't turn up for the consultation that we scheduled. Oh. And you see that they've actually said academic support required. Because of how you can structure this tool, anything that says academic support automatically notifies my academic support team and the head of faculty so that everybody's now looped in. And this becomes an active student record. It's not replacing a CRM, but this is all our learning data in one place. And of course, it's all API, you can get data out. It shows all the contacts so that I don't have to look it up straight from here, which is in Canvas. I can message the other educators and go, hey, I've got an issue with this student. How are they for you? Oh, they're great for you. They just hate me. Awesome. Well, I'm the problem. Let's figure an answer. But we get to do that. And it also has a similar tool for educators. And again, I really want to show this, but I want to make sure you understand why I utilize this tool. I did not want to assess my educators. There is a purpose and a role for that. But in COVID, I actually by default believe that all my educators are brilliant. That is my default position. And that's my default position anywhere that I go. My other default position is that people don't like asking for help, especially under times of significant stress. So what this tool allows me to do is actually see all my educators. And again, this is artificial data, but it actually shows me the educators. It shows me the number of courses that they're teaching. How often are they accessing? How many things have they not marked? How fast are they responding? And when I got this tool, it was not again about me going, oh, that trainer's crap. It was about me going, wow, that trainer's overloaded. They're struggling to keep up with that assessment load, or especially when you have, just set assessors for things and trainers. I can actually see, because you actually look at these two examples. The top one there is 75 ungraded submission, 10% of students are at risk, even though they are logging in, 3 days ago. Yeah, they're logging in, but they're obviously overloaded. Where the one underneath still has quite a lot of ungraded submissions, but all the students are happy and they're posting things really quickly. This tool is called Instructor Insight. It's by the same mob. I would highly recommend it to anybody who wants to find tools that allow you to take the data inside Canvas and turn them into actionable insights. And again, it's a tool that we'll be utilizing at Upskilled in the not too distant future. And even things like discussion posts, which again, is great from an audit level. If I do have a teacher that or a trainer, an assessor that I'm worried about their tone or how they're participating, it even brings things like all their assessment responses or their discussion posts into one screen, where I can now go through, view it, add notes, provide feedback to that trainer if need be. So yeah, really powerful tool. And my favorite, nearly forgot. Instructor to student peer ratios, really critical when we're online, overlooked by many. What's their ratio? What's the peer average? Again, allows me to identify stuff that maybe I would not have seen because data was obfuscated and difficult to access previously.
Hey, Julian, it's Damien here, mate. Buddy, could you finish up in the next 90 seconds, please, sir?
Look at that. I've only got one slide left. I'm on time.
You're a genius.
No, it's rare. Yeah, Adam's celebrating. He's like, Julian is never on time. The next tool I want to highlight is Badger. Now, I'm not here to talk about micro-credentialing. We've been talking about it for years, and thank God people are finally listening. COVID has changed the discussion of what it means to be skills. One of the reasons I joined Upskilled, by the way, talk about a company perfectly placed for skills. Yeah, that's our whole thing, and we're going to be investing in this kind of stuff really heavily. But badges are great also for compliance. For instance, what you're seeing here is the orientation course. The moment a student completed orientation, we issued them a badge. It also gave us an ability to just quickly look at one screen and go, what students haven't completed orientation? If they hadn't, we wrote an automated script that went out. The students that had, they could now go through and put this on their profile. They can display it inside of Canvas. And of course, in the world of micro-credentialing, which we're not here to talk about now, but this gives a lot of power for pathways and things moving forward. And speaking about data, I mentioned Freshdesk at the beginning. This is also really critical for how I run businesses. We're data driven. And again, while I have obfuscated the data, this is a real snapshot. This allowed me to go, okay, what kind of things are coming through? Yeah, most of the requests at the moment around the Canvas tools and academic support. We could see the trends and make sure we allocate resources effectively to deal with it. It allowed me to keep an eye on student satisfaction because it gives them a simple, you've all seen the traffic light smiley faces when you go in and out of IKEA. It gives the same thing in Canvas when they ask a question. So it allowed us, without doing surveys and constant pushing out, to actually understand how our students were feeling, and obviously to keep an eye on, making sure we're getting to them on time and providing that strong student experience. So how do we sum up COVID? I sum up COVID with these two things. First of all, that image says enough. The world of COVID has been interesting for all of us. Yes, and only the art people in the room will actually get the joke. Too many people are not smiling. Van Gogh chopped his left ear off. That's anywho. But then the right-hand side is actually a Canvas tagline that I've always believed in and actually highlight. It's actually from a very well-known philosopher. If you're not familiar, the quote is, without deviation from the norm, progress is not possible. We have seen no further deviation than we have seen in the last 12 to 16 months. That deviation, believe it or not, is not slowing down. If you're following the press, we're not going to have open borders for at least another year. We're going to have cases come and go. Anybody who thinks, oh yes, we've got vaccines, everything's back to normal. Our businesses, we need to be far more agile than that. If you're not familiar with the philosopher, he's very famous for many of his works. His name is Frank Zappa. You usually find him in a record section. But right on time, with 10 seconds to spare, as I said, when Adam approached me about this, I didn't have time to go deep into everything, but what I hope to share is some of our story, some of the tools, some of the rationale and methodology behind it that hopefully challenges you to think about what you're doing in your business, to move away from the, oh, we've always done it this way because Auditor X said we had to. COVID has taken away a lot of those barriers and allowed us to go, no, what's the common sense way? And then how do I make sure I back it up with the data and the reporting and the processes to ensure that we can have that covered moving forward? So without further ado, Damien, thank you so much for having me here. I'll pass back to you to facilitate questions or whatever else.
Good on you. Thanks, Julian. Folks, if you've got questions, please pop them in the chat. Otherwise, can you please give Julian some love in the chat? And let's give him the typical round of applause. It'll probably be silent because many of you are on mute. But good on you, Julian. That was amazing. My head's a little bit like that. And I just encourage everyone to think through, look, what's one or two things that you can take from Julian's presentation that you can investigate. I've been trying to keep up with some links for you, Julian, with some of the products you've been discussing. Not sure I did a great job of that because there was so much, but well done.
What I'll promise to do is I will send this deck both to Adam and Damien, and what I'll also do is provide a whole bunch of URLs with that. So yeah, I'll be happy to provide that after this. Like many trainers, I may have finished this presentation at 1 o'clock this morning, so that's why they didn't have it earlier.
We would never teach that you should do that, and I'd never done it myself. No. Adam, we've got a few more things to go through. You got about 3 minutes to do something you thought would take 10 minutes. New features, away you go.
Yeah, so basically there's a few new things that are coming out that I just want to draw attention to that I think will have benefits to you moving forward, or how you may change your process. And once again, I'm going to do this very quickly. Once again, we've got an update to the speed grader, and that's called the submission reassignments. So essentially what we can do now is that if say your assessor is in the speed grader, is marking the particular assignment, they can actually give a resubmission directly from there. One of the things that you'll need to be aware of, though, is that the assessor will need to give a comment via the assignment feedback inside SpeedGrader to actually activate this particular function. I think it's going to be a really great way for people as they're going through and marking, especially with assignments, that they can go through and quickly resubmit that. The other thing that you'll need to be aware of is you can't give defined timelines within the assignment. So keep the assignments open and they can give them as many resubmissions as they want. The next one I want to speak to is, and I know people have asked about this before, also to the SpeedGrader, the comment library. So as of June this year, the plan is to release a functionality called the comment library. What does that mean? How many times have you always written the same feedback comment to every student? I can see Colleen's laughing. She knows exactly where I'm going with this. This is going to be unique to the actual user. So what they can do is that can actually go in there into the assignment comments, click on the feedback and choose the feedback that they can give. Once again, that feedback is unique to the user. It's not unique to the account. So in other words, the user will need to create their own, but then they can replicate that over and over and over again. Now, the question is, you're probably going like, Adam, this is really cool. How can I see all this? Well, we've updated the Canvas community for you as well. If you go to product and you go to roadmap, you will actually see what is actually being rolled out for May and June and so on and so forth. To get more of a technical understanding of what they mean and the workabilities around these updates, I strongly suggest you go to releases, choose your relevant product, which I've now done. And you've got here the release notes associated with the month they're coming out, screencasts which you can share. But this is really, really, really cool. We've actually written new user summaries, depending on if they're given the teacher access, student access, or admin access. So you can actually sit there and copy and paste the notes that we've actually written for you. You can provide those to your staff. Once again, retweak them for you as well. So those are just some of the few things I just wanted to dwell on. Remember, you can always email your CSM if you'd like to know more about this or play around with the workflow. And also remember, if you want to try it, go into your beta environment, have a go. That's what it's there for.
Adam, quick question from the chat from Ruth Thornton. When did you sneak in here, Ruth? The question is, the comments that you're talking about, which sounds phenomenal to me, they are per user, as you mentioned. Do they go with access across the courses, or are they specific perhaps to the different assignments?
It's a really great question. I haven't really looked at it.
They go with the user. That's the brilliant part about it. So if a user's marking in multiple courses, it's not specific to the assignment. They have like their own little personal bank of feedback comments that they can use across any assignment and any course that they're in.
Oh, that's ninja.
This is Ruth Thornton, by the way. Sorry we didn't introduce her earlier.
Lovely to meet you all of these people who I haven't seen before. It's great to see how amazingly fabulous the group is and how much it's grown, which is wonderful, but it's also great to see some familiar faces. So terrific presentation, Julian.
Yeah.
I think that was his cue to respond, but he's being humble, as Julian can do. Keep going, Adam.
So the only other thing that
I resemble that remark, Damien. I just couldn't find the unmute button. Sorry. Thank you, Ruth. Now back to you.
Now, I suppose the last thing that we have here, and this is something that we did towards the end of last session, and we're about to wrap this up as well, is we want to develop content that is timely, and we want to deliver it based on people who've got experience in that. I think that's really echoed very well with what Julian's done today. So in the comment thread, there's a question. what do we as a group want to cover next? So if there's something that you think that's kind of pressing or something around this time, I would love to see people's ideas about what they would like to see covered. Remember, we want to deliver, we just don't want to be here every month for the sake of being here. What we want to do is deliver these really detailed sessions that people get a lot more out of versus taking, you know, an hour of your month unnecessarily. So has anyone got any suggestions?
Pop them in the chat, please, folks. Adam, do you want to launch the poll? Oh. And while Adam's doing that, also, we want to flag that we're looking for one person, maybe one more person to join the crew who's sort of coordinating things and keeping an eye on what we're doing here. Adam's in, Kerry's in, I'm in, Julian's in. We're looking for one more person to sort of come in and provide some guidance to the group. Won't take up much time at all, I promise. But if somebody else would like to join that group, please contact Adam. Okay, so contact Adam if you think you might want to be that person, and we'll see if we can find somebody else to help just coordinate things and help keep this heading in the terrific direction it seems to be going. Ideas are starting to come in the chat, which is great, folks. We will study those. Okay, so Adam will capture the chat and we will study those after today's session. Huge thank you to Julian. Great stuff, Julian. I hope you found that really helpful, folks. Huge thank you to everyone for being here. We do like to start on time and finish on time. We are going to wrap up in a few seconds. Looks like that poll's not behaving itself, Adam. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm copy and pasting rapidly. I'll be 1 second.
Okay, we'll give Adam that time just to get that poll up. And if you can give us your feedback on the poll before you run out the door, that would be fantastic. Otherwise, we are about to wrap up. Thank you, everyone. If there's anything you want to ask that we can flag for Julian, pop it in the chat quickly, and maybe might give Julian a chance to catch up with you at a later stage. Nicole asks, how can I learn to be like Julian? Well, it's commitment and going all in. I would have thought was part of the equation. Julian, is there anything else you want to add to that while we fill in the chat, we fill in the poll?
All I can hear is a version of Tina Turner's "We Don't Need Another Julian." Just have that earworm go burn into your brain now. That, or just picture me running around in tribal gear going, "It's King Julian," but that's another whole story you can picture. Jokes aside, what I do because I've got a passion for what we do, and there are actually many Julians here. I think that what I'd really love to see is many of you who think, oh, do I have a story to share? All of you do, because all you've had the experiences, especially the experiences of the last 12 months and how you have had to adapt, the learnings, good and bad. I'd encourage you all to make sure you reach out to Damien or to Adam, because it's those stories that really help everybody, even if they're not stories of success.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Julian. Thank you for your passion. Thanks for your inspiration. And thanks for helping us produce better products for our students, because ultimately that's what we should be trying to do. All right, let's share the results. Shall we, Adam? Can we do that? Okay, so we've got 35%. How to help students keep a track of where they're up to, especially when they have to do resubmissions. Aha, that is a ninja topic. 32% integration roadmaps for auto creation of all users, classes, etc. Ooh, that's getting technical. So 16% recommended PD for coding on Canvas and 16% creative use of Commons. Okay, how to use it with the least risk. Okay, really, really good ideas. And I see there's a couple of other things that have come up in the chat as well. We will certainly consider those. I think we're done for the day. All credit to you, Julian. Adam, is there anything we've forgotten?
Too late if we have.
There you go. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for being here. Hope to see every one of you back next month. Bring your friends. Thanks a lot. Take care, everyone. See you later. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy. Cheers.